specifically about law where they were taking notes, and I've consulted law firms about different aspects of the law. So, like, the only reason you need a law degree, I guess, is to officially charge a client. Like, that's the only legal, it's a scam because it's the only legal way to charge a client for legal advice. But I've given legal advice to law firms so they could then charge clients for the legal advice I've given them.
Yeah, that's what paralegals do as well. I mean, they're not consulting, but they're doing all of the legwork, and then a lawyer goes, I'm going to look over this and supervise everything and then bill the client for that. And we have to bill for paralegal work, and then we bill for ours. It's separate, and that's a law. But in California, anybody can sit for the bar, and there's this thing, this lore that the New York bar is the hardest because, of course, New York lawyers don't want as much competition. They want to keep people out as much as they can, and they only want to filter in the best because the firms only want to hire the best, quote unquote. And then there's California where they say the bar is really hard. But this lore, this myth, is based on failure rates. And part of the reason that the failure rate of the California bar is so high, at least this was true a few years ago when I graduated, it was because anybody can sit for the bar in California without a law degree. It's the only state that allows that as far as I know. So, of course, what that means is you get a lot of these like old hippies that are like, I'm going to be a pro bono lawyer. I'm just going to sit for the bar. How hard can it be? And they get their ass handed to them. And so it's like more than half the people in California fail the bar. And it's like, well, yeah, because people who are still in high school are taking the bar for shits and giggles. And, you know, there's a lot of people taking the bar who've never even gone to college, which is fine. But if college teaches you one thing, maybe you and I can agree on this. It's how to take a standardized test, because that's what you do mostly in college. And as far as practical skills, I guess that's one of the only ones that you pull from a university. And
you never need again. Like, when do you ever take a standardized test again after that?
No, you don't. You really don't after you get professionally certified. I think the last one I took was the driver's license exam in California, which, by the way, is pretty hard as well.
My license is suspended, and then my next step is I have to take the test. So maybe I should have been better at standardized tests in college. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just really lazy and bad at driving.
Okay.
I'm a bad driver.
Got it. I mean, I've heard this during my own research. You think the economy is not the same as it used to be. Big surprise. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. And that jobs aren't going to be the same. What do you mean by that? And how does that sort of relate to what we were talking about with college not being a good move for most people in the future?
Okay, you know, it's an interesting question and can be answered at, like, I think the economists that I've read about this, they sort of only talk about 2009 on and what's happened to the economy since kind of the great crash of 2008. But the reality is there's kind of this 100-year trend that has just ended. And I'm not talking trends like also how some economists talk about like weird numerical trends, but we all sort of had this belief, not in capitalism, but in corporatism, this idea that you go to college and then you get a job and you stay at the job for 43 years and then you have a party and you have a pension plan and you get a gold watch and you retire and enjoy your senior years. That was kind of like the American mythology that we all believed in. And the reality is it's never really been true, but for the past 15 years, it's definitely been over. And what 2008 and 2009 did was sort of give all the CEOs an excuse to finally fire everybody they wanted to fire. They really wanted to fire everybody 10 years earlier, but finally 2008, 2009 gave everyone the excuse to just have massive layoffs without it really affecting their jobs. You know, if a CEO in 1998 fired 60% of their employees, he would probably lose his job also. It would sort of signal to the marketplace that things are going bad. But in 2008 or 2009, you were a CEO, you were allowed to fire all of your employees because you could just say, yeah, look, everybody else is doing it. So what's happened is corporatism is over. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Some of them are kind of ugly. Some of them are not so ugly.
Corporatism is what? Like being at the Japan thing where you're at the job for your whole life and it's like Ford. My dad worked for Ford. You start at Ford. You start on the assembly line. ... Manager, retired, pension. Everybody's happy. Your benefits are through the roof and you're getting your salary till you die or whatever.
Right. Corporatism. And when I graduated college, I assumed, okay, that's the thing to do. You get a job somewhere and you stay there for life. And so a lot of people who graduated with me, that was their hope and dream, was to get a job at a big company and be a manager, then a director, then a vice president, a senior vice president, then maybe higher. And there was a reason for the dream. There's all sorts of historical reasons. But I'll start with World War II, and I'll just go really quickly through it. Men left the country en masse, like just every 25-year-old man left the United States of America in order to like shoot people. Somebody had to take their job. So women took the jobs. And then when 80% of the men came back, the men wanted their jobs back. And the woman said, no, I have a job now. I'm free. I don't want you to take this job. So now suddenly in the 1950s, we had this boom because we have these double income families, which was great. This was the last legitimate economic boom in the United States. Everybody suddenly had twice the income in their household. They moved out to the suburbs. They bought houses. They bought 2 cars. They had the white picket fence. They all bought TVs and phones. Then they wanted more, but there was no more money. Everybody in the house already had 2 jobs. Lyndon Johnson introduced the Great Society. He flooded the economy with money. There was the Vietnam War, flooded the economy with money. Nixon took us off the gold standard, so that allowed inflation to flood the economy with money. And suddenly everybody felt flush again and rich again. And now they have all this extra money because of inflation. Then they needed more. So then Reagan came, stock market boom, deregulation, junk bond boom, stocks kept going, money flooded the economy. So everyone's happy. Then you had the peace dividend, Soviet Union collapse, so more money in the economy. Then you had the internet boom, which artificially inflated the stock market. Then Greenspan started printing money. We had a housing boom. Finally, it all came to an end. 2008, everything, all of these things I mentioned above, corporations, housing boom, stock market boom, all of it ended except for the government printing money. And now I'm not going to go all Tea Party because I'm really thankful actually the government printed money because it got the stock market to boom again, which helped things. But that was sort of really the last thing keeping things up. There's nowhere to go now except for the government printing money. The only other place to go, which I think is what will happen, is at some point innovation has to happen again. And that's what I'm hoping happens over this next decade to kind of get demand for jobs up again. I'm on the board of a company called Corporate Resources. We're about $1 billion revenues. We're an employment agency. So what I see every company in the Fortune 500 doing is systematically firing all of their employees and then getting them back as part-timers or demoting them in some way. You see that in the government numbers. Unemployment might be going down because part-time employees is shooting up. So this is just what's happening in general in the economy.
Wow. Okay, so
my history lesson in 3 minutes.
And that's a pretty grim picture, right? I mean, it sucks for a lot of us being younger.
I do think innovation's happening. Like, look, Jordan, you're doing a podcast. Other people are building electronic cars. People are selling information products. Lots of people are doing the so-called, lean startup. I think that people are becoming solopreneurs. They're opening up their own little stores. It's just not the same. It's just different now. And I think there is enough innovation in the economy that, it's not over. Like, I'm an optimist, and I do think innovation is happening. America still has the biggest economy by far, and that will continue.
That's good news because the rest of it didn't sound so rosy. But do you think now, so yes, there's a lot of solopreneurs. There's a lot of people doing their own thing. Should everyone do that? I mean, is there still room in the economy for people that just want to go to college and then get a regular job and, work as an engineer, or even is that even dying? I mean, do people then need to maybe just learn on the job? Are we going to migrate to trade schools? What would happen if you were king?
Well, I think you combine 2 things just there. You said, should people go to school and become an engineer? And then you said, should people go to trade schools? Essentially, an engineering school is a trade school, and engineers still learn skills that are like the last jobs left. But middle management, that entire category that the middle class has filled for about 60 years, that entire kind of layer of the economy has disappeared.
I mean, it's bad for if you are in that job, but do you think that's a good thing as a whole for the economy? What do you think about that?
It's bad if you were in that job. Although, to be honest, many of the people I know, year one, they're very upset and they're very panicked. Like, it's hard not to be panicked if you lose your job and you have a family and so on. but people are resourceful, and there is a lot of money in the economy that's kind of floating around. And there is a lot of opportunities for people to get those creative skills going and become solopreneurs, even if they've never been an entrepreneur before. And where is this money that's floating around the economy? Well, now it's not only the government printing money, but because corporations have fired so many people, corporate profits are at the highest level ever. And it's totally because they fired everybody. But, the reality is there's more cash in the bank from corporations than there's ever been before. This is a good thing because eventually they'll spend that cash and they'll spend it on the solopreneurs. College has nothing to do with it. Nobody should ever go to college again because that was all part of the corporatism myth. People didn't go to college before corporatism, and they're not going to go to college afterwards. They're going to slowly realize that. I'll just tell you my own personal story. So I went to college, had a job. Nothing was really working out for me. So I started a business, which did work out for me. And I sold it. I made a lot of money. And then I so quickly lost all the money. Like I had no clue what it meant to make money. I was like MC Hammer on steroids or something. Like I just totally blew up. I was the worst drunken rock star. And I don't even look like a drunken rock star, so I didn't get all those benefits either.
What was the biggest waste of money that you had? First of all, how much money are we talking about? And what was one instance where you went, I can't believe that I wasted it on that?
I'll tell you the final number I ended up with was on my worst moment, my ATM machine. I probably had about $100 in it, and that was it. Like I was zero. But I lost about $15 million. It took about a year and a half, all cash. And the way I would lose it, this was a while ago. I've done it more than once, by the way. I'm ashamed to say I've done it like about 3 times. And the way I would lose it is when you make money, it kind of makes you think you're a genius. Oh, I sold this business. I finished my job as a human being in America because it's all about money in America.
Right.
Net worth equals self-worth in America. So I feel like I'm finished as a human. I don't need to work on myself anymore. And I would just fall to pieces. Every addiction possible would hit me. But the biggest loss of money, even at 15 million, I'd buy a house I couldn't afford. And then I would start businesses and invest in businesses with totally not considering the risk, not considering that I might actually lose this money. So I might put like $2 million into a business thinking, oh, it's going to easily turn into 100 million, not realizing that it could also go to zero. And you do that 10 times over, then suddenly you're 5 million in debt. It's horrible.
Yeah, wow. So, and that happened to you multiple times.
And so finally I had to kind of say, well, what am I doing right? What clearly I can do this. For the second time around, I kind of proved to myself it wasn't just luck. So finally, after like the 5th time around, I said, what am I doing right when things are going well? It's like statistically significant at this point. Like, what am I doing wrong when things are going down? And the thing that I was doing right was I was taking care of myself. And so now I've kind of quantified it to what I call a daily practice. So I have to do this every day or it's just a bad day for me. So a successful day for me is when I'm physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually healthy. So physically healthy, it means I've slept 8 hours, I'm eating well, and I do some degree of exercise. It doesn't have to be a gym. I'm never going to be like a muscular guy or anything, but I do some degree of exercise. Emotionally healthy, I only spend time with people who I like and respect and want to support and who I think like and respect and trust and want to support me. I've eliminated everyone from my life. I have a 1 strike and you're out policy. Mentally healthy doesn't mean about insanity or anything. I have a whole bunch of waiters pads and I write 10 ideas a day on these pads at least. And it could be ideas about anything. They don't have to be business ideas and they don't have to be good ideas. In fact, I like it when they're bad ideas and just stupid ideas, but it just keeps my idea muscle exercised so that when the good ideas come, I'm there writing them down. I'm not just waiting for God to tell me, oh, here's a good idea, because that never happens. I never have heard of a voice from above saying this is a good idea. I have to be writing them down every day. And then spiritually healthy, again, I don't mean get down on my knees and pray. I haven't done that since I was a day trader, but it means I'm grateful. I'm creatively grateful. So I'll wake up and try to think of throughout the day. I try to think of